I teach in a slightly different order, only because for me it doesn't make sense to teach about photosynthesis and cell respiration without first talking about the parts of the cell. It doesn't make sense for me to talk about enzymes and before talking about proteins. So I teach my own sequence, so to speak, but we teach the same thing. And as far as activities that we do, we're going to do similar activities. She did a really cool activity with the craniums that I wish I had done with you guys, but she only told me about it after the fact. I will bring the craniums back and have them here. Anybody that wants to do that activity on your own time can do it if you want to. All right? It's the same thing we did, except that I told you guys to find your own traits and look at them and analyze them, right? So in a way, it's more creative. But what the worksheet does is it gives you the traits you're supposed to track and asks you to take measurements, actual measurements. And then, so it's like a pretend anthropology thing. It's kind of cool. So I'm going to have it there for anybody that wants to do it. But we share, like, intel. We talk about what she's going to do. I talk about what I'm going to do. And we try to do the similar activities. Except starting 2 weeks from now, she's going to be covering plants and photosynthesis and stuff. And I'm going to be covering something completely different. We'll cover plants in January. We're just switching the sequence around, but we're covering the same things. All right? Either way, at the end, we'll all meet in the same place and make sure we all learn everything. All right? But you guys know that, I try to go in a little depth here, but I love her activities. She has a lot of awesome activities, and we're going to make sure we're going to do them as well. But anyways, we're grading the quiz and we view it at the same time, so make sure you kind of pay attention to that, okay? So, the first thing we're doing, why is it important to classify species? Why do we care to classify species? Margie is not here anymore. Nicholas. Yes. Why do you think why do we go around classifying stuff? What's the point?
It's so now we can know who's related to who.
That is very good. So we can know who's related to whom. When we are classifying, we classify them based on what? The things which they are what? Similar and different. So why do we put us in the same group as the gorillas?
Because we have some similar. We're more similar than different.
Right, because we're different from them in some ways, but similar. Are you with me? Yeah. So what do we learn from studying classification, really? What do we learn about? Yes? Not really. That's biology. What do we learn?
How are we related?
But what is that about?
Evolution.
Yes, that's the point. Why do biologists care about classifying so much? Because it gives us insight into the evolutionary relationships between life forms. That is very important. Now, when it first started, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that because evolution was not even a theory yet when that started, right? In fact, the natives started launching this. Guys, humans have been naming life forms since forever, right? We name life forms, but everybody named things a different name. So sometimes you might be talking about the same animal because you have a different name for it. Are you with me what I'm saying? So what is another reason that's important to classify? Yes, Michael. Right. So you can communicate about the same thing in a similar way. All right? Are you with me? So that's why they did it originally. So there could be agreement among scientists when we're studying the same thing, and we can talk about the same thing, and we have some sort of system to catalog. Because scientists like to collect data. But as scientists started collecting data about a variety of life, as we know, we talked about this in evolution lecture, they started getting curious. Why are so many life forms so similar? But why are there so many differences at the same time? Why is it that sometimes very different things are similar in some ways? And why is it that sometimes very similar things are different in some ways? Right? So we know, based on Darwin's theory, there's explanations for that. Why is it that two very different branches sometimes have the same trait? No. It's very different groups with the same trait. Yes, Michael? Same environmental pressure. What do we call those structures, like the wings of the bats and the wings of the birds, which are similar? Yes? Analogous structures. And what type of evolution is that showing that they're ending up in the same thing? Convergent. Okay. So what do we call the other case? We also gorillas share a lot of things which are in common. Why do we share so many things in common? Yes? Not so long ago. Very good, Annie. And then we share all these characteristics. What do you call these characteristics that we share in common? Yes? No. Yes? Homologous structures. Okay, stop. I'm not going to go to hands anymore. All right, so then, Gabriela Taveras. All right. Where is she? Oh, right there. So, Gabriela. So, but are we all 100% the same as gorillas? So why are we different from gorillas? But why? Differently than they did. That's the key. All right? Now, why do we evolve different from them? This is where people get it wrong. Be careful before you answer. Think before you answer. Why are we different from the gorillas? All right? Yes. That's the answer everybody gives, and it's not right. That's only 1/5 of the answer. All right? That's a little review of the second topic that we covered in this thing. Is it only selection that makes us be different from each other? No. There are 5 other mechanisms. So it could be selection. What else could be why we're different? Yes? Sorry? What about genetics? They have something that we didn't do. Like what? What are these things called? These genetic differences? Yes? You don't know? Changes in the DNA code that makes us different from each other?
Oh.
Mutations. Drift could have been different. We could have had a drift event. They could have a different drift event. Genetic flow. None of them main. The point is they had a different evolutionary history. And that's why they're different. But how long ago they have split from us is more recent than, say, from the fish. And that's why the fish is so different from us. Are you with me? So, that's why it's so important to classify. Because we're trying to understand the variety that exists in life. Now, take a moment back to realize this. There are millions and millions, and if you count all the bacteria that have not been discovered, all the plants that have not been discovered, all the birds and beetles in Amazon that have not been discovered, all right? If you count all the variety of existent life, there are millions of species. Like some conservative numbers, say 16 million species. But it could be as many as 100 million species. But that's just the ones which are extant, with an A, which means currently around. There's also have been thousands of species that went extinct, either because of mass extinctions or because it didn't make it through the evolutionary process. Other species that morphed into other species through evolutionary process. If you count the total number of species that have lived on this planet, there's a great degree of variety, right? And scientists are interested in classifying not only the living species, but all the species who have ever lived that we have records of in a fossil record and so forth. So the process of doing that is a very tedious process. And until very recently, we used to look at certain things. Well, let's start from here. What do we do to tell if a species is different from another? All right? So, Felipe, where are you? Felipe, give me one. Morphological species test, very good. By the way, it's 1 point per test, either the name or the explanation. All right? So we can look at morphology. What is that all about, Felipe? And for a long time, that's how biologists used to do it. It looks the same, put them together. The problem of looking at just that is that sometimes you think they're not the same, right? And they are, because they look different, but they're really the same. The wildly different butterflies are actually the same species. Are you with me, I'm saying? Other times you have things which are very similar, but they are not the same species. So looking at just morphology can be tricky. By the way, this is the first question we're grading, or no, we're grading something else already?
No, it's the first one.
All right, so then we're talking about what, so morphological species tests or looking at the way they look. There are other ways. Matthew Ruiz. Yes. Uh-huh. What is that about, the niche test? Not only that, what they do, how they behave, their role in the ecosystem, their space in the ecosystem. So if two things occupy the very same niche, it's possible that they're the same thing. So that's another good way to look. For example, bacteria, they don't really breed with each other, so sometimes that's the way we tell them apart. Which I already said the next one is the biological species test, or, right, ecological, which means they're able to do what? Interbreed. Let me make a note about that. I also mentioned this in the macroevolution lecture, but it's always good to review. It doesn't mean that they can just have babies together and therefore the same species. All right? If this baby can have sex with members of the original populations, then they're the same species. But even if this baby can have sex with another member of B and make another baby, sometimes this baby or that baby's baby is sterile. for them to be the same species, going generation forward, it has to survive. You know what I'm saying? So for example, in here in Miami, there's ligers in the parent jungle. And there's a liger that has sex with a lion to make a liger. But that liger is sterile and cannot have babies. So what does that tell us about the lions and the tigers? But if you just look at the liger, you would be like, okay, well, they can have sex. So it's not about interbreeding. It's about successfully interbreeding over generations. Does that make sense? Very important. All right? What is the last way that we do this? Calvo. DNA testing. Now, this is the new way to go. Because DNA testing is more precise. It can give us the actual count of number of DNA-based paired differences. Now, if something is 99.99999% the same as you, you're probably the same species. Are you with me? Now, if you're 86% the same, the chance of being the same species is not very high. So you can look at the molecular test, all right, which is looking at the DNA or the protein sequences and seeing if it matches. Now, whether the person explained this or listed a name is 1 point per, right? All right, so that's 4 points so far on the quiz. All right, make sure you're taking notes at the same time. It's not just about the quiz, it's about making sure your notes reflect this. If your home notes are crappy and don't have the important stuff, which is what I'm covering right now, you got to make sure you add this stuff. This is important. What do we call the method of calling these species, of putting them together? Don't raise your hands. You know I'm not going to hands. Marjorie Lopez. Melanie Diaz.
Binomial nomenclature.
Binomial nomenclature. That's the point right here on number 3. All right? We're looking for binomial nomenclature on number 3. Make sure you grade that. All right? We don't mark things wrong. We only mark Rosa. Who came up with that for number 4? Linnaeus. Okay, that's another point. Okay, another point. Okay, let's talk about the rules for binomial nomenclature. All right. So, Camilo, give me one way. Where's Camilo? One rule. In what languages are written? Latin or Greek, right? So a person said that is a point. Make sure. Okay, it's 1 point per rule. Up to, all right? Now, you can get more than 5 points, but I'm only going to ask for 5 points. Okay, let me see something. That was 4, 5, and now 5 more. Okay. And then a name here, so it's 6. Okay, so, I'm counting the points in the quiz. All right, so the first point is by saying it's Latin or Greek. All right? The second point, another rule. Marco, you know another rule? Very good. Species is supposed to be lowercase. Give him a Lego. What about the genus, Marco? Capital or not capital? Always capital. Right? That's another rule. So 3 points so far you could have gotten. Genus is always capital. Species is always lowercase. How do you write it? When you're writing it, how do you write it? Yes. Italicize. Very good. All right? Italicize. That's another point. Do you have to italicize or can you do something else? Yes. You can underline it. So italicize or underline. What can you do to the genus that you cannot do to the species aside from capitalizing it? By the way, it's not like you have a choice. You have to capitalize the genus. But the genus you can do something to it that you cannot do to the species. Yes. Yeah, you can abbreviate it, right? You can abbreviate the genus. All right? Okay, so I could do it like this. Homo sapiens. Right? And that's italicized. Or I could have underlined if I couldn't, especially when you write it out. It's hard to tell that it's italicized. Or I could have done this. None of that. All right? I could also have done that. And of course, this is in Latin. So those are the ones. Anything else that I've missed out? Yes, Larry. That? Well, actually, that's the other thing. It's binomial nomenclature. The other rule is that you use the genus and the species, and that's it. You don't actually use the other ones. But yes, the other ones are capitalized as well. But the point is, for the scientific name, you're not going to give the whole name. Not to mention, that doesn't even make sense anymore. We don't really call things. For example, let's say talk about humans. Humans are eukarya, right? We are from the kingdom Animalia. We are from vertebrates, right? But you can find a domain for each one of them, but we're going to talk about this well, hopefully I'll get time to it. If not, I'll talk about it at the beginning of the next class. But if you actually look at the tree of life, there's way more than 7 levels of splits. And so, our name, so to speak, if you think about all the groups that we belong to, it's way more complex than that. That's why scientists have something called a phylocode. We'll explain to you guys at the end of the period. All right, so anyways, those are the rules. Points for each one of them, yes. That's a rule. You can give them a point for that. Right? Okay. Now, the next question, let's see what I have to cover here, is, so, we used to put fungus. Let's do the levels first. The hierarchical levels of organization. Alright, so then these are just the main levels. You could have sub-levels and levels that don't even have names. When you look at a tree of life, there's a website called the Tree of Life Project. We're going to look at them either in this class or at the beginning of next class. And then I want to show you guys, there's a lot more levels than these levels. Okay? Domain was not even a level that the Linnaeus came up with. But we now use domains. Okay? Now, what's the next one? Don't grade it yet. Kingdom. Phylum. Class. Order. Family. Genus. And species. You're going to give 1 point for everything the person named, whether it's in order or not. Don't grade the order right now. You're just grading it. If kingdom, not domain because I gave it to you. Right? Not the domain because I gave it to you. But everything else, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all those are points. So that's 7 points total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Now, you can get 3 points if the entire thing is in order. 2 points if there's one thing missing or out of order. 1, that's it. 1 point if there's more than one thing out of order or missing, but you have at least 4 of them in order. So, if you have 4 of them in order at least, and you can give them 1 point. If you have all but 1 in order, you get 2 points. If you have everything in order, you get 3 points. That's in addition to the 7 points for naming them that you got. So this is 10 points total. Is that clear? All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Do not give a point for the domain, but the domain has to be there to get the order right, right? Okay. So, already up to 21. Okay, so, in the plant kingdom, by the way, there is no phylum. They're called divisions instead. Just so you know. Put that in the notes if you don't have it. Okay? Now, when 2 things share a group in common, you know something about that. So, for example, which of these guys are more closely related? Hold on, Alec. The genus. So, a point for saying the genus is the most closely related group, the ones that share genus. How did you know that, Alec? How did you know that? Yeah. How did you know that? How did you know automatically that genus was more?
Because it gets more specific.
That's the key. To be in the same domain, what do you really have in common? Do you guys know why we're all in the same domain? What is the characteristic that puts you in a domain? See? You don't know what it means. What does it mean to be in a domain? All right? Now, we know what it means to be in a species, don't we? What does it mean to be in a species? Say species to someone else. What does that mean? It means you have the same niche, you have the same shapes, you have the same, you can interbreed, and you have very similar DNA. Right? But what does it mean to be in the same order? Or the same class? Or the same family? Or the same genus? That's the problem with this system. It doesn't mean anything. Are you with me what I'm trying to say? It just means that you're in a more specific group than another group. So for example, this is what I'm trying to say. Well, Linnaeus came up with this. Alright? So you have all of life. And then you put those lives in kingdoms, so to speak, right? Now the lives, this is like a Venn diagram, right? So the lives that are in this kingdom are more similar to each other than the life forms of the other kingdom. So when I put things in this kingdom together, So, for example, I'm in the same kingdom as fish, right? Because we're both animals. And then plants are in a different kingdom. So I automatically know what about me and fish and plants? What do I know automatically? Yes. Yes. You can say that because we share the same kingdom. Now, here's an interesting question. There's a flowering plant that's in the same kingdom as a boss, a simple plant. I'm in the same kingdom as fish. Which pair is more closely related? Do you see the problem? That doesn't mean anything. You don't learn anything like that from that. You can compare two things. Okay, if I'm in the same genus as something else, and I'm in the same family as something else, I know that because I'm in the same genus as that thing, we're probably closer. So we're closer to Homo erectus or Homo neanderthalis than we are to Australopithecus australianus, right? Because Australopithecus australianus only shares the same family with us, but not the same genus with us. Does that make sense? So we know we're closer to Homo erectus or Homo neanderthalis, which are extinct, but we're closer to them than we are to... I really think I'm trying to say. But if you get two fish that share the same family, right? So two fish in the anchovies family. I really think I'm trying to say. And then you get us and the Australopithecus australianus. Same family. Are you with me? Great apes. Are you following what I'm trying to say? Which one is more closer? Us and the Australopithecus australianus, or the two fish in the anchovy family? You don't know that from that fact alone. See, you want to say the two fish, but you don't know that. That is what's missing from this system. There is no meaning to the order itself. Being in the same order does not necessarily mean an X number of similarity. Does that make sense? It just means that anything within the same order shares a lot of characteristics in common. But when you compare one order to another, that means nothing. Are you what I'm trying to say? Yeah? That's an interesting point. Okay, make sure you understand what I'm trying to say. If I know I'm in the same order as something else, I know I share characteristics with them, lots of characteristics in common. But when I compare my order with another order, I can't compare the similarities. Are you with me what I'm saying? Alright? I'll give an example of what I'm trying to say so that it actually makes sense. There's an order of numbers called evens. There's an order of numbers called odds. There's an order of numbers called primes. An order of numbers called natural numbers. An order of numbers called negative numbers. Right? Because if I'm a prime and I'm in the middle of the primes, I know that I share something in common with all the other primes. But just because I'm in a prime, right, order, I know that I share those things in common with them. But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I'm more similar to the other primes than I necessarily am to the negatives, if I'm also a negative prime. If I say if that's such a thing, I don't think it is. Alright? But my point is, okay, you can't imply the depthness of similarity from this system. However, what are we trying to do though? Within the kingdom, you're going to have different phylums. Within the phylums, you're going to have different, what is it next? Class, and so forth. As you go down towards species, it gets more and more specific. Meaning I share more and more in common. Meaning I have a more and more recent common ancestor. Does that make sense? Meaning, which groups here share the most distant common ancestor? Kingdom. So we already graded those 2 points, right? Okay, yes.
What about if they put like kingdom or family are mostly closely related?
Oh, okay. To get the point, you have to say the most closely related are the ones that share the same genus. That's the point. The ones which are most distant from each other are the ones that only share the same kingdom. That's the point. Yeah, or you labeled A and B, right? Because the way they phrase it doesn't look like they know what they're talking about. All right? Okay. Now, so I talked about already what is the disadvantage of using a system of grouping. Now, biologists still use that. So if I'm talking about a bird, a finch, I can say that's a bird. And all the other biologists automatically know what that means. It means they have characteristics that birds have. Are you with me what I'm trying to say? But here's the thing. Let's say, for example, you say a reptile. What are the characteristics of a reptile? if you actually look at the characteristics of a reptile and what it means to be a reptile, by definition, we are reptiles. Because a reptile, by definition, is an organism, a primarily terrestrial organism, although there are reptiles that fly or reptiles that go in the water, right? But they evolve on the land. So an organism that evolved on land, okay, that has 4 limbs and amniotic eggs, which is eggs that have two layers of coverings. All right, we have amniotic eggs because on belly of our mom, we actually have an amnion and a chorion, two layers of protection to the embryo. All right, by definition, we are reptiles. Are you with me? So what do people really mean when they say a reptile? They mean the current living branch of reptiles that do not have mammal or bird-like characteristics. Because, are you with me? I'm saying, and that is not very clear. I want you to understand, birds are reptiles. All right, mammals are reptiles. We are just highly evolved reptiles compared to them. But this is the other thing, this misconception. Turtles have been evolving since the ancient reptile too. So they are also evolved from the ancient reptiles. All right? So we all share an ancestor though with a very ancient reptile. Right? So that's the thing, the misconception that's inherent with this type of grouping. You fail to get that point, that we are reptiles. Just a special group of reptiles. The group of reptiles that has hair, placentas, and mammal glands. Are you with me? So, but we are special. Mammals are reptiles. Birds are reptiles. They're an evolved dinosaur group, which are an evolved ancient reptile group. So we are as much reptile as the birds are reptile, and the reptiles of today are as much reptile as we are. Now, when we say reptile, we obviously mean something different from that. We mean the group of currently existing today of non-mammal and non-bird reptiles. But that fails to deliver the message about our history, our evolutionary. Now, when you look at a tree, look what you learn from a tree. So if you put it here, for example, amphibians, right? Now, amphibians didn't make it to a reptile branch because they don't have. Some of them have 4 limbs, like frogs, but they don't have amniotic eggs, so they don't make it. You with me? I'm saying they're primarily evolved to be on land eventually, but they don't make it. So they don't have the amniotic egg. That characteristic there, amniotic eggs. They're missing it, so they're out. Are you with me? Now, some reptiles don't have hair. So since they don't have hair, since what I'm doing right now is something called a dichotomous key. I get over here and I ask a question, do you have it or you don't? If you have it, you go this way. If you don't have it, you go that way. Are you with me? That is what trees of life are about splitting into branches. And every branch is a two-way decision. Dichotomous. Di means two. So you get split, right? So that split was caused maybe by hair. I don't know if that's the actual thing that caused the split. I'm just giving an example. All right? Now, among those things, there's other splits. So there's a group that's like turtle-like. But there's a group, which I'm not going to talk about the characteristics because I'm everything. But turtles and things turtle-like are more like here. But then you have a group that are more lizard-like. Right? And in the lizard-like group, you have groups which are crocodilian-like. Right? So you have the lizard-like, and then of those you have the ones that are more crocodile-like. And the ones which are not crocodile-like. In the crocodile-like range, all right? So you have the lizard-like ones and the non-lizard-like ones. This is pretty much extinct, right? Now, on the lizard one wise, you have the lizard ones and the crocodile-like ones. The crocodile-like ones, you have dinosaur-like ones and the non-dinosaur-like ones, like the crocodiles of today, right? So you're going to split that crocodile-like, dinosaur-like. On the dinosaur-like, you have birds branching out of that. I really feel the same, but each of them is a split. Similar splits happen in the mammal branch too. Are you with me? For example, if you have placenta or a marsupial. So marsupials are not in our branch. They're in the other branch. There's a characteristic there, placenta, that the marsupials don't have. So they're out. Are you with me? And then we have the apes. Maybe you have opposable thumbs or no opposable thumbs. No opposable thumbs, you're not a great ape. You follow me how that works? So each step of the way there's these splits. Each of these splits, number 6. Each of these characteristics that cause you to have a split in the tree of life. What are they called? Yes. A derived character. All right? Derived character for A. All right? So anyway, we get a 4, we get a 3, we get a 4, we get a 2. And we're about to grade 5. We already graded 8. All right. So, derived character. Now, I already mentioned the things I was talking about. With respect to that character, for example, with respect to hair, all of these organisms are out. And those which have hair are all in. So that's the key term that I use. In group or out group. So all of these which have the characteristic of interest are an in group. And all of those are called the out group. Now, that's if you're using simple classification trees. If you're looking at a cladogram, which is a special type of tree, there's the difference between a phylogenic tree and a cladogram. A phylogenic tree splits all over the place. A cladogram is just like this. Everybody's being compared with respect to a single organism at the top. And so you just have lateral splits like this. You don't have secondary splits in a tree. Are you with me? It's more to compare one organism to another set of organisms. And see, compared to that organism, what is the relationships of the other ones? On the beginning of next class, I'm going to show you a little video on how to create a cladogram. And I'm going to tell you guys, by the way, I'm going to be telling you guys a lot of things. I'm going to be telling you guys instructions on how to review for the test again, even though I've already told you a million times in class. I'm going to give you a direct link to the Escambia website, a direct link to the study guide folder. Remind you guys of the other ways you can study for it. I'm also going to give you guys links to the 2 suggested activities that I have for next class, which again, we only have half an hour for that because we're going to spend 15 minutes perhaps finishing this, 15 minutes talking about the video of how to make cladograms, and I'm going to talk about the Tree of Life project. After all of that, it's about 25 minutes have gone by already. Then you would have an hour for practice, but you only have 30 minutes after that because actually you have to go to the thing 15 minutes later. So you're going to miss that there practice. So what I'm going to do is whatever practice you do there, great. And then the next class, which is supposed to be water properties day 1, is going to be half mastery for classification, half water properties day 1. Are you with me? Okay. Anyways, what I'm saying over here is the tree has in and out groups. So look at this. And what you can learn from a tree, which is so much better than pointing to groups like that. A, B, C, E. Okay. So, with respect to this character right here, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. With respect to number 3, who's in? Who's an in group? Who has 3? No, C doesn't have it, he's out. So just D and E. Everybody else is out. Does that make sense? He didn't make it, didn't have it. These things are evolutionary steps that happen in those groups but not the other ones. Does that make sense? Derived characters, pay attention. Are you with me? Alright. Which means, who is closer to C? Okay, pay attention. Who is closer to C? D or B? Alright? No, not both. D. Here's why. Let's see the things that A shares in common, that C shares in common with D. Both went through gate 1. Both went through gate 2. Are you with me? Gate 3, D went, but C didn't. That's where they start being different. Are you with me? But let's look at B. B went through gate 1. Did it go through gate 2? No. So you see how D went through both 1 and 2. But B only went through 1 together with C. Does that make sense? So they are in with respect to character 3. So they're closer. Which means they are in the same branch at some point. They have a same crop. Now, this is another thing you learn from trees. Are we in monkeys? Do we come from monkeys? No, because that would be saying we, E's, came from these. Is that what a tree tells us? No, we don't. That's not what happened. What actually happened is that monkeys and us share a common ancestor. So we come from gorillas. No, but us and gorillas came from the same thing. Does that make sense? All right? All right, so then Remember, if you share a characteristic, more characteristics in common, you have a more recent common ancestry. That is what that tells us. Which put us over here. By the way, there are complex key terms which I'll accept here as well. We also call this monophyletic. All right, because we share the same branch. We also call this paraphyletic because I'm in the outgroup. Parallel. You see? You see how B is parallel to the other ones. You see? It's on the side, right? And we call this thing is a weird thing, like us as the birds, having a characteristic in common, right? So for example, sometimes that happens. Sometimes something evolves in this branch and in this branch. Analogous structures. Are you with me? But then the scientists can start to think, hold on. Does that mean I need to move B over there? Now let's think about what that would take. If B was over there, just because it shares a common ancestry, are you with me? So they have, but then you have to explain why B doesn't have 2, 3, and 4. You see? So is it easier to say B didn't make it here, but then we got 5? Or is it easier to say B is supposed to be there, but it lost 2, 3, and 4? That takes more steps. It's more complicated. So we picked the easiest explanation. You follow what I'm trying to say? If we put birds in the same branch as us, it was just because they regulate the internal temperature like we do, we would have to explain all the ways we are different. And all the ways that birds are more similar to the reptiles. See, birds, the other reptiles, birds are over here. And they're more similar to these, they're monophyletic with a lot, so they're closer to turtles than they are to us. If we put them here with us, just for the mammals, just because of the internal body temperature, we would have to explain all the ways they're more similar to the turtles. Are you with me? And it would be much more complicated. So we picked the simplest explanation. But that kind of setup, where a trait shows up in 2 branches, is called polyphyletic trait. Poly, because it is in more than one branch. The trait is in more than one branch. Okay? So monophyletic, paraphyletic, polyphyletic. But that's advanced. If you didn't get that one, it's okay. All right. Now, so that means number 6 is done, which only leaves us number 1, which is the chart. And so we're going to work on that. Can you erase the board for me really quick? We didn't do 5? Oh yeah, I was about to talk about that. So, what is then the advantage of using trees? Right? Yes, Lance.
They show branches.
But what does that mean though? What do they shall tell us? Yes. They show, well, can you not tell evolutionary relationships from the other one? You can. If you have the same genus, you mean you're very closely related. But what can you see? Like, if I put, I'm a homo, right? Raise your hand if you're a homo.
I'm Homo sapien, guys.
Mark was like, I don't want to do it too. No, we're Homo sapiens, right? We're all homo in the terms of the genus, right? Now, we're all homo because of the genus. Now, does that tell us our history? Or does it just tell us that we are in the homo genus? Are you with me? So, but on the other hand, if we have a picture of our tree, we can trace down the entire evolutionary history of all the characteristics that made us who we are. Are you with me? So the trees of life, the advantage, by the way, this is what I'm looking for in the answer, for the point. You can learn more about the evolutionary history, all right? More about the evolutionary relationships of the organisms from a tree than you can from the other ones. Is that clear? We still have to talk about how to make the trees. And I don't think we're going to get that far, but let's try to finish the chart. Okay, so this was 3 points. So 1, 2, 3. Now, and number 5 was 1 point. Okay, so before the chart, we have 37 points. No, 27 points. Okay? Now, in the chart, 1 point for each domain listed that should be listed, which are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. All right? 1 point each. That's 3 more points. So we're up to 30. Okay. Now, From now on, each box in the chart is 1 point.
Each box?
Each space here is a point. You don't have to have done in the boxes, but you have to have exactly what it says with nothing extra in it to get the point. Alright, you see? Alright, so, what's the name of the kingdom in that thing? By the way, let's talk about something now. Remember how I told you that the fungus used to be a plant? We used to talk the fungus were a plant. But then we changed our mind because we saw, well, fungus they have the same structures and they are not photosynthetic. And they're actually, see, this is the thing. If you put the fungus and the plants together, that makes no sense because fungus are more similar to animals than they are to plants. As soon as they realize that, they say, okay, if you're more similar to animals than you are to plant, that's wrong. Right? Which is why we do this. Now, this has to be in notes somewhere. I'm going to explain this since it's kind of important. Okay? So watch out. As far as major taxa is concerned, this is how you treat them. Okay? We are eukarya. Now, eukarya is actually closer to archaea than to bacteria. That's very interesting. Because archaeans are considered the most ancient type of life forms on Earth. I want you to understand something. That's a misconception. Archaeans are not ancient. They are like the ancient. But they've been evolving since the ancient times. And so they are not ancient at all. Are you with me? Now, the bacteria, the true bacteria, the ones that cause disease, the ones that decomposers and stuff like that, they are more dissimilar to us than they are. Here's this crazy thing. They used to be in one kingdom together called Monera. But then people realize this bacteria type is actually closer to the eukaryotes than they are to the other bacteria. See, that's what the tree's saying, isn't it? See how they're monophyletic over here? Are you with me, I'm saying? Which means, why would we put these guys together in a kingdom if these are actually closer? So this domain and this domain are closer than these domains are closer, even though they're both bacteria. So that told us you got to change it. We can't have them in one kingdom. The same thing happened to the fungus. Okay? So if you look at the eukaryotes, they split into 4 kingdoms. Right? So now I'm going to get this branch here, and I'm going to treat for that branch. Just the eukaryote branch. Right? This is the eukaryote branch. It works similar. So you have plant-like things, fungus-like things, and animal-like things. This is the eukaryote stuff. Are you with me? This is the domain stuff. Okay? Now, we are animal-like. But who are the animals more closely to? The fungus or to plants? To fungus. And who are the fungus most similar to? To plants or to us? To us, because they're monophyletic with us, not the plants. That's why we took them out of the plant kingdom, because it didn't make sense. They were not very plant-like, and they were actually more closer to the animals when we analyzed them. Right? This split, by the way, is made based on genetic data. Alright? Genetic data allows us to do this. But there are also some morphological similarities too. Morphology. Our cells are more similar to the archaeans than they are to the bacteria cells. Alright? Here, it's also about cellular structures, cellular morphology, which is why it's in this chart. You're going to know the shape of the cells and what separates them from each other. Okay? Now, here's the interesting thing. Where are the protista? They're supposed to be in the kingdom called protista. This is why hierarchical classification groups don't make sense. The protista are not a branch of their own. In fact, it's like this. You see this branch of plant-like? Some of those people are unicellular, and some of them are multicellular. So that means algae is a protist, right? So over here, algae is here somewhere. But plants come from the algae. They have so that means you have protists here, which are plant-like protists. So plant-like protists. In the fungus branch, all right, the fungus is actually an offshoot of a branch that's actually fungus-like protists. For example, mold. And in animals, there's animal-like protists, like paramecium and amoeba. All right? Animal-like protists. So you see, we put these people in the same kingdom. But they're not a kingdom. They're not a unit. Like, think about it. We are closer to amoebas than we are to algae. Right? But amoebas are closer to us than they are to the algae. Why are they in the kingdom with the algae? Are you with me? They should be with us. So that's why the classification system doesn't work as well as trees work. Because trees are telling us the truth. What we do with this, which I'm about to show on the board, is an incorrect way to think about it, the way that the eukaryote branch branches out. There's not like protists, animals, fungus, and plants. There's 3 branches, and in that branch, some are unicellular, some are multicellular. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Algae is different from animals. But amoeba is more similar to animals than it is to algae. You cannot put the amoeba and the algae in a group closer than they are to us. That doesn't make any sense. Which is why we start abandoning this idea of using group classification and start using trees more. All right? So to explain what that means, we first got to look at the tree, and then maybe if you have time, we won't have time, but we have 10 minutes left. We'll revisit this. The same thing happened in 5th period. I'm going to have to finish the tree next time, but I'm going to do as much as I can. Let's start with bacteria. What is the kingdom called? Yes. Eubacterium. What does the eu mean? Anybody know? What eu means here? That means true. True bacteria. Okay? Now, they are all prokaryotic. I mean, this is a point. Call this right. Paired with that. Prokaryotic. Point. Multicellular, unicellular, all unicellular. Now, let's talk about what this means in the first place. What does it mean to be multicellular? Yes? That's actually not correct. All right? It doesn't mean having many cells. What does it actually mean? Yes? Not exactly right either. Here's why. Bacteria, normally, a lot of them actually live in colonies. Lots of them together, working together. But that's not multicellular. So what does it need to be the actual defining characteristic for it to be called multicellular? Yes? Not really. They're very simple multicellular organisms like algae. Some algae is multicellular. Some is uni, some is multi. Yes, try again. Okay, so a colony, all the cells are the same. Is that true for us? Are all your cells exactly the same? So what does it mean to be multicellular? Try again. Yes. Different kinds of cells in the organism. So a lot of these guys live in colonies. But all the colonies are the same thing over and over. Are you with me? That's not multicellular, right? So you remember that. Metabolism. This is where it gets interesting. There are some bacteria, okay, which is phototrophs. For example, they are called cyanobacteria. Most of the photosynthesis in the world is not done by plants, is not done by algae, is done by cyanobacteria. In fact, you could make the argument that the chloroplast that's inside of plants and the algae is actually a bacteria. So technically, all the photosynthesis is done by bacteria.
Please listen up for your afternoon announcement.
Okay.
Tired of playing games?
Then,
Maybe you're not playing
hold
the
on.
right kind. Come
For
challenge
bacteria,
yourself with
some
science
are
trivia,
chemotrophs.
smartboard, and video games every Friday after school
Right?
until
Hold on.
5
Hold on.
in
Wait
Mr.
yet.
Lima's room.
Some are chemotrophs. What that means is that they do chemical processes to get energy that are not based on light. For example, right? You have a lot of nitrogen fixating bacteria. That's an example of that. Chemotrophs.
The thespians are acting
Some
again.
bacteria
Singing
are
and
decomposers.
singing are on sale now for $2. Send a singing telegram
Alright.
to say thank you to a friend
Some
or
bacteria
teacher.
decomposes.
Singing
And some bacteria
Indians,
eat other
a turkey,
bacteria,
and a pumpkin pie
which
will
means
send
they
you
are
a thank you
external
message
heterotrophs.
On Friday, November 20th. This
Now,
event is sure
I want
to
you to
get
explain
it.
something
Don't
to me.
miss out. Buy a singing telegram.
Each bacteria is not all of them.
You need
Right?
the class schedule of the
Each
person who
bacteria,
recommends the telegram
but
to.
in the kingdom, there's examples of all of them. Are you with me what I'm saying?
Attention 8th graders, your class
Cyanobacteria is not a chemotroph, a heterotroph, a decomposer, and a phototroph. But in the kingdom, there's examples of all of them. Does that make sense to you?
We will be signing up for the
So
chocolate
to get this
boxes
point, you have to have all
that
four
we
of them
will be
listed.
selling in January.
But these are graded separately. A point here, a point here, a point here, a point here.
If you have any questions,
Which of those characteristics which are there should be there? peptidoglycan
All
cell
girls
lines.
interested in joining the Lady Bears softball team, there will be a mandatory meeting on November 19th at 2:40 for high school and 3:40 for middle school
Okay.
in room 204.
Archaea.
Everybody is welcome. We will be discussing physicals, tryouts, and everything you need to know about being a
Archaea.
lady
The
bear.
kingdom is called Archaeobacteria.
Tomorrow, to continue my lecture,
Archaea
week
stands for
is
ancient.
Western Wednesday.
Now, I
where
want to talk
we
about
wear
this.
cowboy hats
This
and
ancient
boots.
does
Please
not mean
remember, for the remaining
that they are
of the
old.
week, no cross
That means that they are very
are
similar
allowed.
to what old life
Please
forms were
make
like.
sure that
Does
you
that
are
make sense?
following the restrictions
But
for
they have been
today.
evolved
Please
since
make sure
then.
you are following the
Okay,
restrictions.
so they
for
aren't
today.
old.
Thank
They're
you.
like the old were. Are you with me? I'm
Tomorrow
saying?
is a 246 day Saturday.
Okay.
See you then.
What about this one? All prokaryotic. What about this one? All unique. Okay. What about this one? Chemotrophs. Only chemotrophs. All right. And then this one here. All right. None of those characteristics apply to them. None. So it's supposed to be blank. All right. And finally, well, let me talk about examples. Okay. Halophytes. These are people that live in very salty oceans and lakes. You have thermophiles, bacteria that live in volcanic vents. Like if you go to Yellowstone Park, near the volcanoes, you have these bacteria living in the thermals. There's also methanogens. Now, here's what I want you to understand. These are bacteria that live in very, very crazy places on the earth. That's why we call it ancient life, because that's how the earth was in the beginning. But these are the ones that call disease. These are the ones that are like parasites to us. These are the ones which are decomposers. These are the ones we deal with every day. These, you're only going to see them if you go to those extreme places. Are you with me there? Now, finishing off the day, we'll leave eukarya for next time. Remember that the eukarya are actually more similar to this one than to this one. And remember that these are more similar to the eukarya than they are to the bacteria. This is an interesting thing. Okay? Alright guys, let's pick it up from here next time and talk about the eukaryotes and show you the videos on how to make a cladogram. I will send to you guys instructions on how to review for the test and my 2 favorite activities that you should think about doing over the next couple of days. I'll see you guys then. On the sorter, the quizzes go.